Alright, so let us talk about the full first season of Alien Earth. I say the full first season because, we talked about the first two episodes of it when it premiered, right? And, just in terms, of how this entire thing played out, right? So, so if you don't mind, I'll just do the premise fit quickly, right? So this is basically set before the very first Alien movie, right? Which I should mention came out in 1979. I have to mention the year when when that film was released, right? And still remains one of the best sci-fi horror films ever made. And of course, the sequel, which came out in '86, Aliens from James Cameron, still remains one of the best sequels ever made, right? And one of the best like sci-fi action horror films ever made, right? But all of this is gonna come up like later on in terms of how I feel about this show here, right? So yeah, basically it involves, this particular spaceship, the USS Magno, I believe that's how you pronounce it. Yeah, and
Right.
and the mission was to pretty much acquire all these xenomorph and similar alien species
Right.
and breeds and stuff like that.
They
right?
introduced some new species in this, which was
Yeah.
interesting enough because
Yeah.
in the world of Alien, we never really, as far as I know, these other species were never introduced,
No.
and I think they probably was like in comics or games maybe, but like I don't know these things, so it's like all right, this is new material, which was a smart call, and you were getting to that.
Yeah, and it keeps things fresh, right? Because
Yeah.
admittedly, right, throughout the course of this decades-long franchise, we've seen a lot of the xenomorph, right, and the chest burster, and the face huggers, and all that kind of stuff, right? But we've
Right,
never
same
seen other creatures. Like case in point, I think
Right.
this will be a fan favorite, even though it doesn't have a name. That eye octopus
The
creature.
eyeball.
Yeah,
The eyeball monster.
yeah, the eyeball monster. That is that is destined to be a fan favorite, right? But yeah, basically it just starts off with this ship, acquiring all these items, and there's a cyborg in there who,
Right.
similar to the first film, is assigned to just bring these specimens down to Earth at all costs, right? Even if it means wiping out everybody on the crew, on the ship, which is exactly what happens, right? And as a result of some complications that we see in a brilliant episode, I must say, yeah, you see how basically in the first episode you saw that the ship was basically like crash landing to Earth, right? But in that particular episode, it kind of explains why that was the case, right? So yeah, the ship actually crash lands on Earth. Of course, the cyborg is the only survivor. It crashes in the city of New Siam, right? And this crash now piques the interest of this trillionaire by the name of what he calls himself, Boy Cavalier, right? He is this
Like Cavalli, right?
yeah, he's this trillionaire, this prodigy, this big multi-millionaire.
He's the world's youngest trillionaire.
Yeah. But also,
Right.
and you see this from episode 1, he's kind of a dick though, you know what I mean? And
No, yeah, he's terrible.
Yeah,
He's total trash.
yeah, he's total trash, right? And it only take slight spoiler, the final episode for a character to say, with ADHD as severe as yours. I was like, that explains it, because all through the show, I'm like, why you acting like this, right? And so
Yeah,
it took one character to say like, oh,
yeah.
that's why.
Yeah, it's a not so subtle setup of a mix of Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg. Like that's the idea. Like it's like, oh yeah, right. In the future, gonna be ruled by these weirdos.
Yes, and
stuff
it's a
like
good
that.
thing you say Mark Zuckerberg, right? Because he is channeling Social Network Jesse Eisenberg vibes
Right.
with his mannerisms, with the clothes, with the dialogue, all that kind of stuff, right? But yeah, on the subject of Boy Cavalier, right? So he is one of like the 5 mega corporations that run Earth right now, right? One of which, of course,
That's,
is Weyland Yutani, right? And they are the ones who pretty much hire the side.
We just say the Wayland side. We say the Utani side.
That's right. Yeah.
Of Wayland Yutani.
Yeah, and then you learn the granddaughter of the Yutani herself, right? Well, this relative or this Yutani, whoever, right? She the grandmother was the one who hired the cyborg to do the job in the first place, right? But yeah, the granddaughter now is like,
Remind what's these names? I forgot. What's the fella name in the thing?
All right, Morrow. We keep saying this cyborg, right? But yeah, Morrow is his name, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so but right, so that's a speed through things, right? So yes, the ship is down, and of course Boy Cavalier sends a team to kind of collect things, right? Because the idea is that this thing coming to my turf, so I go and steal all the shit, right? And then you learn that there's this policy where he have like up until like I think it's like 2 weeks to pretty much keep it, to do inspections on it and then send it back to Weyland Yutani, right? So this gives him the opportunity now to, poke and prod these creatures and see if he could add it to his experiments, right? Because at the end of the day, it's all about, creating what is called the hybrid, right? Which is a mix of, it's like a a different version of the synths, right? The synths that we know from, the Alien series, right? But, as we mentioned cyborgs before, I just mentioned synths, right? But hybrids basically are synths in the sense that they have robotic bodies, right? And they bleed that same kind of like white goo, but they have human consciousness uploaded to them.
Yeah, they're uploaded minds. But you learn the really, really unfortunate nature of them is that it's children.
Exactly.
So what they did is they effectively lie about the state, and then they were dying anyway. They were like, most of them was like terminal patients,
illnesses,
kids, and then all of them they basically lie about their death and then transfer them into the intake and they lie about it. And well, the usual lawyer shenanigans to cover this self. Problem is that these things, they were kind of compromised in interesting ways, and that gets into this involvement and that interesting subplot with Morrow and one of the senses, great stuff.
I thought that was great though, and it added a lot of tension to it, especially what the kid had to do, right? So yes, let's wrap up the premise, right? So the show really centers on these kids, right, or as they call on this particular island, lost boys, right? Because yes, Boy Cavalier loves Peter Pan, right? So his first hybrid is Wendy, who is played brilliantly by Cindy Chandler, who is actually Kyle Chandler's daughter and whatnot.
Okay.
Yeah, they didn't know that till after the fact.
Yeah, you learn something about them later, involving another girl. So it's like, oh, is she a hybrid or she a pure synth? I can follow. But another girl named Jean. So the earlier girl. But I think she was just a pure synth. Think so.
Yeah, so it centers on her, her being the first one, and then these kids, right? So as soon as these aliens now come into their home now, and they're being tested and studied and whatnot, right? They start to learn about themselves and the world around them, and that's pretty much how insidious this Boy Cavalier is, right? But at the same time, it's alien. We're in the world of aliens, so of course, as you would expect, aliens run amok on this island and shenanigans ensue, and we'll stop there, right? So that's to give my general thoughts on the show here, right? And of course, you can interject when you're ready, right? So here's the thing with me, right? First 2 episodes, right? I was on board with this. I was, not singing the show's praises as yet, right? But I was like thoroughly impressed into the direction where it was going, where it was coming up with these very creative ideas in terms of progressing the world of Alien, right? One thing I really admire though is how it pulls from Prometheus, which I know is a show that you absolutely hate, right? But what I liked about Prometheus was that it was really Scott going back to his Blade Runner days, right? Kind of touching on existential themes of, what makes us human and all that kind of stuff, right? And it was interesting seeing that, in that film through the character, not Benedict Cumberbatch, was it a guy named
Michael Fassbender?
Right, yeah, Michael Fassbender's character, please, right, and of course, with the history of what's the name again?
David,
and of course, the history of the xenomorphs themselves, right? But as I said in my review for the first 2 episodes, the problem is that it had to rely on the alien stuff, right? So it's characters going down dark hallways and doing dumb shit and becoming food for these xenomorphs, right? That was the problem, right? And the thing is with this show here, right? While there's a lot in this that I am impressed by, right, and I admire a lot, right? This ultimately was a frustrating view for me, boy, because just to go back to Prometheus, right? Keep in mind, after this was Alien Covenant, right? I think that came out in 2017, I believe it was, right? The best way I could sum up my enjoyment factor of this show is, if this show came out right after Covenant and before Romulus, I would have been singing its praises. But because it come out after Romulus now, and because even though I still have not seen the show, but I'm familiar with the premise enough to kind of know what to expect from it anyway, right? A part of me is just like, all right, these are cool ideas, Red. But you're giving me these ideas now in a franchise that more than worn out its welcome. It just feels like wow, well, like it took us all these years to get to this point, like to touch
Right.
on synths and what makes them tick and hybrids and all these other things. Like we now getting there after all these years of games and movies that pretty much recycle the same premise from the first movie though. That's the
Right.
problem I had with this show. So on the one hand, I admire the efforts that the creator, well, let's just say the creative team involved, the creator Noah Hawley put into this, right? And you could tell, like I say, he's a fanboy. The man loved
Right.
the franchise. You could see it in the cinematography, and especially in the editing. Boy, I love the use of cross dissolves, and I was thinking of Apocalypse Now as well too, because that show did a
Right.
similar thing where it would superimpose like 3 or 4 different images and dissolve one and then feed in another one, and it does that. That's some Apocalypse Now shit. Like I was like, all
Yeah.
right, no, I see what you're doing there, right? And like the musical cues, even though they're done by Russo and not oh gosh, I forget the composer's name for the first film, right? Yeah, so it's pulling from the old movies as well too, and I'm like, yes, I liking all this, and just in terms of the
Right.
pacing and where the story was going, it's like, yes, I liking all this, but it just feels like ideas I could have seen in the movies. I would tell it like I wish I saw these ideas implemented in shows like Prometheus and Alien Covenant instead of like recycled material that we got over these films, right? And that's not to say that the films never brought anything new or different to the table, right? We could talk shit about Tree. At least Tree tried something. It just fell
Right.
apart, right? Because of shenanigans, right? But here's like I see all this stuff and I get where they're coming from, and I could tell that it's coming from somebody who probably like know this franchise in and out and could say, no, here's an opportunity for me to explore this thing and that thing, and
Right.
let's bring in new creatures, all that kind of stuff, and I admire all that, right? But at this stage, it's like, yeah, boy, but this franchise done burn out already, Dreader. Like you still want me to care about all this, So ultimately, and I should mention this as a speech rumor review here, right? So positive wise, I thought that the acting was great across the board. Though, I thought
Yeah.
that Cindy Chandler, who I've never seen before on screen, I thought that she shined in this as Wendy. She has these very like inquisitive eyes about her. That, like every time she's on
Yeah.
screen, there's something about her eyes that always draw me to her, right? And she's always so fascinated
She
with the
remind me of
aliens and stuff.
yeah, she remind me of if you remember, okay, there's an old Star Trek episode, Lal, Data's daughter. She kind of remember that a little bit. Yeah, that's what I was
Oh,
thinking of a little bit, especially because of her hair.
yeah.
So yeah,
And
I
well, you go ahead. I'll pause and you go ahead and see what you have to say.
yeah. So yeah, you are. I agree with like 90% of what you're saying. Like to me, there's a lot of yesterday's homework with this, and not fanboy empty fanboyism, but it's like yeah, I wish we got this earlier, but I'm still glad we get it, and that's how I feel about like say something like Pre, or I would with the Predator franchise. It's like hey, we should be getting this decades ago or something like it, and it feel like a what if version of a better version of say Aliens 4 or something like that, where they finally like pulling the trigger on a thing that they never pulled the trigger for, which is well yeah, what's happening if we get them damn xenomorphs on Earth? What gonna happen now? Or do something like that, right? And we just never get it. And this guy, Holly's excellent at just putting this together. And I don't love this, but I very strongly appreciate this because it's like it's solid throughout, right? It's solid throughout. They only have one nitpick, and I don't think it's a nitpick necessarily because most of it is largely explained. But um, it's just a really well made project that just I want to put in the camp of yesterday's homework now. It's like yeah, we should have get this at least in the middle, like at least 10 years ago. Right? That's how I feel about the kind of. But like, look, we finally get it. We finally get somebody to put it together and make it work. And the studios or the original creators, they stop like farting around and doing all kind of weird shit with it. And look, I'm not a super aliens fan, but I like the movie. I like the movies for what they are. And yeah, that's how I feel about this. Like it was a little slow. Like alright, so my actual like complaints about this. A little on the slow end, like for me. Like if you appreciate the pacing, that's fine. But I thought the pacing was a little too slow for my liking. A little too slow, but
I,
not a
I
big
I
deal.
agree. I agree. You do
Not
have
a
to
big deal.
wait,
It's
right?
not
And it's
right.
not like every 5 minutes must be a jump scare. No, but it
No, no,
really
no.
takes
It's
its
not.
time to tell a story.
Yeah, yeah, but I don't have a problem with any of that in that sense. But it's like it is a little too slow for my liking. It's more like I just my busy life and I wanted something. Oh, I wanted in and out and that kind of thing. But nah, I sit down and watch it. I enjoyed it for what it was. And then my only other nitpick complaint is the typical characters being dumb to run the story forward. Some moments had me
Yeah.
like, some moments
Yeah.
had me like, you're being serious, right? But here's
I
the thing.
know,
To be fair,
boy. Yeah, even
they
even me too.
kind
I was like, I understand it's alien, but though,
right.
why would you do that? That's stupid.
Yeah. I'll tell you one moment that had me pissed off, and I find it was real stupid, but again, it makes some sense. The character doing this kind of, which is all I was just say is a sheep but in a thing, right? That's only
Oh
do. Um,
yeah. Oh, I was like,
and I was like, I
God,
watched, and
really,
I was just like, bro, this
bro?
all I watching about is like, bro, just like the plate eater, like you know how to do all of that, and so it's that little thing, right? But that's it. Other than that, I really enjoyed this. I really appreciate it for it. I say I really appreciated it. I can't say I super enjoyed it, or I was like really excited for the next episode or anything like that. But I was like, they're cooking. The man do anything. If you're an Alien fan, you'll really like this. The guy clearly the Holly loves this material, clearly, and it's that, but it doesn't come across as empty reference. You see, one of the things I absolutely hate is when they do empty reference. No, you tell a new story in the world by referencing things we kind of know, right? We kind of know this about Earth, and they build that. So they do, like, the stuff I appreciate is, oh yeah, right. Like, this is how the world is in terms of corporations. Corporation take over. Here's how and why. Instead of just only Whale and Newton, you're only referencing that. They reference other companies. They reference this guy as the focus of the other company. That is good stuff. Then stuff like, well, the other ships, and then the thing I appreciate most is the other creatures, because that is like the breakout character, the eyeball monster, right? The eyeball monster is not only really creepy and weird, but also ridiculously intelligent. Like, that is what make it really work. And then
Yes,
we get some really cool side characters, like, as I say, Morrow, great character,
yes.
great, like, standing on business, not fucking around.
Yeah,
Characters being
I
serious.
love how
Sadly,
immoral he is. Sure, like
he no business.
he do
He
business,
just
and
like
especially
he just
what he did with
yeah
that particular lost boy. I was like, God
yeah.
damn, dog,
You
wow,
know, business. It's just he had to do what he had to do. He had to get things done and then make it work. The ending I didn't completely love. Like, I really felt that could have been more
same.
continuity, and it felt a little too the sequel-y,
Yeah,
next season beaty, a
it
little bit,
it
but
felt anticlimactic to me, and that was
a
what I
little
was
bit.
about to say with nitpick.
Yeah,
It just sort of stops at the
yeah,
point of like, all right, they really want me to be like surprised, sorry, excited for season two. Like, dog, you
right,
could
right.
go a little step further. It just stops and
Right.
just says, all right,
I
the
felt,
end.
I felt, I felt if anything, they could have just have a really conclusive ending. But again, is the man telling his story? So, like, I ain't knocking the man, like, whatever. He do anything, they're cooking. So that as I say, let them cook and they make it work. But I would have preferred something more conclusive as I ending with the island. And then, and then they do something at the end with the eyeball monster, which is like supremely creepy, but they make it work. In the final scene, one of the last scenes of the show. Like, okay, I can live with this. Again, appreciated this, strongly appreciated, because of how well made it is. The set design is great, special effects is great, camera work is great, like all of that stuff. It had no like nitpicks there at all. It was fluid to make it work. The characters being dumb was kind of explained. It's kind of explained, kind of makes some sense. Some of the characters being dumb didn't make any sense. Like,
Yeah,
I'll say the stuff on the ship was kind of dumb. It was a
I
little
know,
ridiculous. That
I
shit was a
know.
little like, I
Yeah.
know that again. I know the world is say, well, it's because of these corporations shipping out on the people and these people disposable, and that's why it have no OSHA standards. But like, to me, it's come down to the point of common sense. Like, you effing around with these creatures, put on a mask now. Because literally two characters died because they didn't have a mask on. I was like, you can serious, right? It's a fucking alien that you never see before. Like, come on. Little things like that, whatever. It is Whatever, it's a nitpick. It's a kind of a nitpick, kind of, because they kind of explain it, kind of. But I find it still unsatisfactory. Whatever, but at least for me. But this is one of those cases where the good vastly outweighs the bad one way or the other. And it didn't stick with me the way I felt it could have, but this is still pretty good and I can't be mad at this. But as I said, we should have get a shit 10 years ago. Whatever, that's how I feel about it. But yeah, props to Noah Hawley, you finally did it. So, like, well done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, just like you, I can't knock the man for doing his job. Clearly he's a fan, and I would say this show is more for the diehard fans of the Alien franchise than the ones who, like me, just put 1 and 2 on a pedestal, right? You could tell like
Right.
he has, just a strong passion for the franchise in general, right? So it's not just 1 and 2, but also like Alien 3 and Prometheus and Revenant, right? Sorry,
Right.
Covenant, right? Yeah, I could see
Right.
shades of that. I did not see any resurrection here, so I'm happy for that. Nice. But yeah, the creatures really stand out as well, and the xenomorph does this thing, but that eyeball monster
Yeah.
is the highlight, especially
Yeah.
when it's paired
Right.
with that sheep. Though I was like, wow,
You know?
yeah boy. If I could say one last thing though, I really like the idea, even though it's insidious, right? Into the story, but the idea of these hybrids having the minds of children, right? So
Right.
mad points for I forget who's the black fella dread, right? I forget his name, right?
Right.
But I thought that he was the best in terms of
Actor. Yeah.
acting, in terms of
child, yeah.
yeah. Cause the way how he moves, especially when he gets scared, it's like, oh my god, what's that? You know what I mean? And when he is paired with a character who is also put emotionally through the ringer, I thought those moments work brilliantly, in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that guy is the MVP as well, right? Also shout out to Timothy Oliphant, who does the synth role as well. And but one thing though, I like that because that's one thing that I would say just minor nitpick. I felt like the synth that was on the ship, the spaceship, I thought like I know what he was trying to do because the same style of acting, but I felt like he sort of did it a little too much, where you have to try to act emotionless now. So you must talk like this as if nothing matters. But in the case of the synth in that ship, it almost as if, oh, I know something you don't know, and you I smarter than you because I'm a computer, right? That I felt they could have handled that better, right? But with Timothy Oliphant's character, it's like, yeah, I know more than you, but there's a cynicism about it as well, too, right? And that's what makes him such a really intriguing character. But yeah,
And then there's another big reveal involving another synth, and I thought that was a good reveal too. It's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like, okay, I see what's going on here. And that character revealing, there's another character revealed to be a synth later. Like, okay, yeah, this makes sense. Like, what's going on with him? And like, that was a cool reveal. It came a little too late, and I felt they resolved that a little too quick. But it makes sense again, make perfect sense in the context of the world. It's like, all right, they explained all of this before anyway. That was good too. Yeah, he makes all the ideas reasonably well. And I say again, if you're an Alien fan, you're super into this. Yeah, I could see you're really loving this. But it's because of just, to me, good production value and just good, stuff going a long way. Like I can't put, like you say, one reason we appreciate Andor is because the work is put in. Is it don't feel half-assed. Sorry to say it, but it have too many other shows that feel a little too half-assed. Looking at you, Star Wars, except for Andor. And this kind of stuff, and some of the MCU stuff feeling a little too rushed in its own conceit. So that's about it. We finally getting some good production value stuff, and they're making it work. Rating, I still have to give it a high, and it'll probably get some of the best of the year, or amongst the best of the year, because of just good production value. Rating, yeah, I give it like a 8 out of 10. It's solid stuff, all things considered. It's just I'm not a big enough Alien fan to be super into it and make it work for what it was. But yeah, I dig the hell out of it. I know the minor nitpicks still there, but it's nitpicks nonetheless. Yeah, so 8 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, and well, one last point I want to make about Alien. The one thing I really love is how it shows memory and flashbacks. I love how they use it with the same, like I'll say with the cross-dissolve stuff, right? It's taking what Ridley Scott did in the first film, but doing it in a very creative way. And I really admire that, right? Some people might watch these moments and find them to be artsy or just pretentious, like, you want me to be meditative and think about life and whatnot in a show about aliens rampaging and killing people. Well, that's the show. That's really what the show is. Sorry.
Yeah.
And you could argue that's what Prometheus was trying to be, right? It's just that it didn't succeed all the way, right? Take it, for given the attempt, right? But yeah, for me, this is not going to be in my best of, but this certainly will be in my honorable mention, right? Because this is a show that I don't want to forget by year's end, right? Because I am not heavily invested in the world of Alien, I guess that's why I didn't enjoy it too much or that much.
Right, me too.
But I still admire the effort that Noah and his team put into it. You could tell that there was a lot of care and effort put into this, right? They didn't half-ass anything at all. It's just I thought that the execution was a little sloppy and more not in the technical aspect. I thought that the technical stuff is like next to flawless in my opinion, right? It's just the narratives and the things that need to happen because it's Alien, is that kind of problem. But I would say that has been the problem this franchise has been facing since Alien 3, right? And it just can't seem to shake it, even though we have this, TV show for the first time ever, right? But yeah, for me, rating-wise, I'm going to give this a strong 3.5 out of 5, man. I think that it is worth checking out. You don't have to be the biggest fan of Alien to appreciate it, though. But I imagine that if you are, you will absolutely love this. You'll absolutely be on board with it, right? But I would say, just to wrap things up, I would say you have to be at least familiar with Prometheus and Alien Covenant, as those the two shows that really zero in on the synths and what it means to be a synth and all that kind of stuff, because that bleeds over into this show here, right? but you still get the alien thrills and kills and whatnot, and you will enjoy yourself with the thrills and kills here, right? And yes, you get some great creature effects and some really creepy ass creatures. Again, that eyeball monster is a standard, especially when he is paired with that sheep. Yeah, it's a dynamic duo of demented genius right there, right? But yeah, Alien Earth is worth checking out, man. It's definitely worth checking out.
Yeah,